Let's break down the situation in Australia in a more down-to-earth way. Everything over there seems to be tough, from box jellyfish and huge kangaroos to the really scary thing, house prices. Right now, it's super hard to find a place to live in Australia. Rents are sky high, and people are practically battling each other for the few homes available. We're definitely in a housing crisis. The average price for a home in major cities is nearly $1 million. The real problem shows up when you compare house prices to what people earn. In the last 20 or so years, house prices have shot up 4 times, but wages? They've only doubled. Because you have this thing called the price-to-income ratio. It's a way to measure house prices against people's earnings. A good ratio is when a house costs about 3 to 5 times what you make in a year. So if you earn $50,000, you should be looking at houses priced between $150,000 to $250,000. In the US, the average price-to-income ratio is just over 4. But if you check the list of cities with the most expensive ratios, you'll find 3 Australian cities there. For example, Melbourne is ninth, where a house costs about 10 times the median annual income. Sydney's even crazier, at almost 13.5 times. Higher interest rates have made things even tougher, especially for renters and people with big mortgages. Over 1 million Australians are now struggling, which means their mortgage payments are eating up a big chunk of their paycheck. Today, I want to dive into what caused this housing mess and what history can teach us about economics. So let's jump in. This is Binary Map. Hope you're doing well. Stick around for money and business insights every week. Let's talk about the housing market. Why did Australian house prices go up by 11.9% in 2023? The simple reason is the same worldwide. Super low interest rates for more than 10 years made it easy to borrow money for buying houses. This led to fewer houses on the market. After the 2020 pandemic, when rates dropped even more, house prices in Australia soared 33%. Rent prices have also skyrocketed, rising faster than inflation and wages. Now, we're spending more of our income on rent. We're in this weird situation where everyone expected prices to drop, but they're actually going up. High interest rates mean people don't want to sell their homes and get a worse rate. So fewer homes are available than usual. To really get this, we need to go back to the 1700s and talk about physiocrats. They were the economists of that time who thought agriculture was the key to wealth. If you owned land, you had control over the work and the crops, which meant you had the money. Imagine physiocrats as the first step in understanding economics, like the beginner Pokemon Squirtle. Then came the classical economists, who were like the next evolution, War Turtle, in our analogy. They saw things differently because of the Industrial Revolution. These guys believed that wealth wasn't just about land. It was a mix of land, cash, and jobs. But still, land was a major part of their thinking. So that's a quick, easy-to-understand rundown of Australia's housing crisis, and a bit about economic theories. It's all about understanding how land, money, and jobs have played their roles throughout history and how they're affecting us today, especially when it comes to buying a home. All right, now it's time to dive into the next phase of our economic theory journey, post-industrial revolution. We've now reached the 20th century economists, the big players like Blastoise in the Pokemon world. Their take? It's not just about what you make or what you have, but how well you use your cash. Think of folks like Warren Buffett or big investors. They're not making stuff, but they're super smart with their money. But here's the twist. In this modern way of thinking, land isn't seen as a big deal anymore. It's just another asset, not something we focus on like we used to. This approach leads to policies that really benefit those with money to invest. If you're in Australia, you might know a couple of these rules that are making houses too expensive for many. First up, there's this thing called the capital gains tax discount. Basically, if you've got an investment property for more than a year and sell it for profit, you only pay half the usual taxes. This is a huge deal for those in the top tax bracket, cutting their rate from 45% to 22.5%. Economists think this is why house prices shot up after this rule came in. Then there's negative gearing. And here's how it works. If your investment property costs more to maintain than what you earn from it, you can use that loss to lower your taxable income. Say you earn $100,000 a year and your property makes $10,000 in rent but costs $20,000 in upkeep. Now you can say you only made $90,000 and get taxed less. Critics say this is unfair because it favors investors. A lot of these costs aren't actual money out of pocket, but things like depreciation, which is just on paper. So investors end up with more cash in hand. When you mix these two rules, it encourages folks with money to buy properties, rent them out, and then sell them later, paying less tax. This means fewer houses for everyone else. Economists have been overlooking land in this whole equation, favoring those with money instead. And this has led to countries, including Australia, struggling with high rents and not enough houses. Demand for rentals is huge, but there's hardly any available, less than 1% in Australia, the lowest globally. That's why rents for houses and apartments have jumped 16% and 20% in just a year. The ones really feeling this are young people and those with lower incomes. 1 in 5 renting working households is in financial stress, skipping meals, relying on charities, you name it. And here's the sad part. It used to be better. In the 1990s, Australians could save for a down payment in just 7 years. Home ownership was at 71% in 1966. 3 out of 4 people owned a house back then. But in 2021, only 40% of 25 to 34-year-olds owned homes. And for the lowest earners, it was just 28%. Now it takes 12 years to save for a down payment. But in the long run, everyone's going to feel this pinch, especially those planning to retire. Almost half of retirees over 65 who rent live in poverty. Without owning a home by retirement, you're either living on a tight budget or working past retirement age. This trend of more renters and fewer homeowners is not just an Australian thing. It's happening in many modern economies. So, which economic theory had it right? The physiocrats, classical economists, or the 20th century thinkers? Turns out they all did in their own time. But now, we need new ideas because ignoring the value of land has led to housing shortages, unaffordable prices, and homelessness. Here's a crazy fact. 80% of all Australia's goods and services are made on just 0.2% of its land, mostly in central business districts, CBDs like Melbourne and Sydney. This just shows how much businesses are willing to pay to be in these prime spots, close to everything they need. As a result, land values in these CBDs have shot up, making rents and mortgages more expensive. So what's the solution? I'm no policymaker, but some economists suggest focusing more on land values and taxing unproductive land owned by investors. Another idea is to make building new houses easier. During COVID, Australia had only 400 homes for every 1,000 people. Nowhere near enough. The role of land has changed over time. Now owning land is key again. Look at people like Bill Gates buying up farmland. They get it. Money's easy to borrow, but we can't make more land. Wealthy folks are snapping up land, renting it out, and waiting for a tax break to sell. You can see all this in 2 ways. Either you get mad at the policies and people who led us here, or you accept this as our current reality. These economic issues might not change in our lifetime, so if you're looking to make the best of it, maybe take some advice from Dave Ramsey. Live simply, earn more if you can, work remotely, and consider living outside expensive city centers. I hope this sheds some light on this situation. So that was it for this video. Remember to like and subscribe for more insights. I'll be here, trying to tackle the world's problems one video at a time. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.